Lyric Theater and Dupree's Catering in Lexington.
Our show is produced with the support of VisitLex.com, Deering Banjos, the Mark Guitar Company, Fransky String Instruments, Ear Trumpet Microphones, Travel Host Magazine, the Bluegrass Hospitality Association, and Doubletree Suites by Hilton Hotel Lexington, welcoming visitors from all over the world to Lexington, Kentucky.
Wood Songs and the Wood Song symbol are registered trademarks of Rachel Aubrey Music. Our show is distributed worldwide by the Wood Songs Radio Network and PRX. Thanks for listening. I'm Josh Baer.
For Michael, Jonathan, and the entire Wood Songs crew, this is Dorothy Edwards. We hope you'll join us again next week for the Wood Songs Old Time Radio Hour.
You're tuned to CILU 102.7 FM. This is What's Up in Thunder Bay for Monday, October 21st. The Foundry presents their Every Folking Monday Night Music Showcase featuring a different artist every week. Tonight's featured act is Milton Shoe Shack. It runs from 7 to 10 p.m. There's no cover and it's suitable for all ages. And on Tuesday, October 29th, Tommy Milston Hortz presents 76th and Still Kick Show at the Community Auditorium. Doors are at 7:30 p.m. It's suitable for all ages and tickets are $37.
For more details and a complete listing of what's happening in our city, go to tbshows.com. Thank you for listening and stay tuned to CILU 102.7 FM.
And Shirley, I've heard all about it. Now you open your door at once.
Please go away, Marilla. I'm in the depths of despair.
Oh, fiddlesticks. Now you open this door at once.
Please go away, Marilla. I'm in the depths of despair. I'm in the depths of despair. I'm in the depths of despair.
Oh, fiddlesticks.
Go away, I'm in the depths of despair, said Lucy Maud Montgomery's iconic moxie-filled character Anne of Green Gables. I'm Layman Pascal, and today we're going down, down, down into the depths of despair on the Cinematic Asylum on CILU 102.7 FM in the shadow of the sleeping giant. Where are these much ballyhooed depths of despair? Are they out somewhere by those much ballyhooed tar pits where people find those much ballyhooed dinosaur bones? Are they deep down in the extinct crater of an Icelandic volcano? Are they underneath the White House or buried beneath the Pentagon? Maybe they're so black-holishly deep the whole universe is already inside them. Do we ever ask ourselves how far down are the depths of despair? Why do we even think of despair as deep, as if despairing was something that went on down there? Why isn't it the heights of despair, or more hilariously, the widths of despair? And why is width more hilarious than height or depth? You be the judge, I guess. Etymologically speaking, to despair is to go down from hope in Old Latin, to descend from sperare to desperare. It's basically the same word as the English word hopeless, but it also has this visceral metaphor of going down. And why not? Do we not feel heavy and listless in our depressions? Do we not collapse onto the floor when physically or emotionally wounded or otherwise overwhelmed or depressed? And what kind of pressing are we looking for that fails us when we sink below it into a depressing region? Is that like when you write something without pressing the pen to the paper firmly enough so that nothing gets written no matter how much effort you put in? You look down at all of your so-called efforts and see nothing but a blank page? Depressing. Not enough pressure, maybe. My friend Doug, who against all good advice insists on acting as both his own lawyer and his own doctor, told me there are two very different forms of depression which can be revealed distinctly by brain scans. One of them gets much better when you give them antidepressants, and the other one gets worse or holds steady. But as everyone knows, psychiatrists are perhaps the only doctors who definitely don't want to look at the organ they're treating and mostly ignore brain scans. So we get pretty sporadic results, diagnosing and prescribing based on just verbal histories of apparent behavior and self-reported emotions. One form of depression, says Doug, is an underactivity in the brain, and the other is an overactivity. So one depressed person has less stimulation and isn't doing as much internally. The other one is doing way too much. So much so that even going out to get the mail exhausts them, burns them out. They did every bit of the task with 1,000% too much brain activity, so they burn out constantly. The exact opposite of an underperforming brain. One is exhaustion and the other is a fail to activate. So maybe there are two different species of despair with similar external systems but deeply different underlying causes. Or maybe there are two different depths of despair, two different pits of despair of equivalent depth. Now here's Sing Leaf Forever Green.
True love wears when she meets me downtown beneath the big skyscraper. Green, green, green little girl. Green grass, green lizard, green like the blanket on my true love's bed where we lay. Sunlight streaming down through the window. Green, green, my green little girl. When I think back on my life, I am ashamed of all the time I spent so carelessly and selfishly. Nobody would believe that for a little while that girl had me higher than a cypress tree. Oh, she was my green little bean, green patch of clover, the girl from Carolina I just can't get over. I feel my seasons changing, so maybe I can be green looking like her, green looking like her. Of her, she's forever evergreen.
Wow, I can't tell if that was depressing or not. But think about this. A large, luscious, leafy green tree is nothing but a clever arrangement of dirt. A blade of grass, a mushroom, a flower, a bird, a giraffe, and you yourself standing upright are, from some angles, nothing but a clever collection of dirt or clay or mud or mineral molecules. But why then do all these things grow and stand up and strain upwards against gravity? That's not common behavior for dirt. All these so-called living things are characterized, it seems, by their resistance to gravity. Mud and clay, opposed to living things, are characterized by their dramatic submission to gravity. Mud and clay just fall when you let them go, but life is almost anti-gravitational by nature. Not anti-gravitational in the sense of floating in the omnidirectional void of space, but in the sense of feeling, absorbing, and counteracting and opposing the constant downward acceleration of gravitation that so readily clutches every rock and every grain of sand and muck. We are constantly falling. Okay. Even to stand upon the earth is to be constantly falling, constantly accelerated downward toward the center of the planet by the gravitational field, and yet we are not merely, not simply falling. If anything, we are constantly converting our falling into a rising. We have learned to reproduce cells and stack them on top of each other like mycelial brains extruding their mushroom stalks. We have learned to grow bones to scaffold our efforts, bones that grow stronger when they make efforts to stabilize themselves. We are dropped down from the womb of birth and cannot stand on our own 2 feet, but this is quickly remedied. Our muscles, our brains, our loved ones, our ancient histories all instinctively conspire to get us quickly upright, to build the strength we need to go against gravity. And then when the walking child topples over, when the toddling toddler fails to toddle and tips and teeters and topples over back into their previous jellyfish condition of just laying on the floor, they are devastated. They weep and moan and scream at their servitude to gravity, just as they rejoice in amazement when they can stand and walk and grow upward and fly away. They despair when they fall and rejoice when they rise, as do we all. Children even get upset when they get tired and start to fall asleep back down into the gravity well, as if the depths of the unconscious in the body were also the depths of despair. Eyelids getting heavy, legs starting to buckle and need to be horizontal, all thoughts becoming too heavy to lift, darkness, depths, down, down, down. Yea, for resting, but also, oh no, the heavy maelstrom is sucking you back down. But come on, is gravity really that bad? I'm sure you know that we semi-divine upright monkeys are foolish creatures, easily misled by our neurological and cultural reactivity. We should, therefore, I think, either be resigned happily to our foolishness, ready to be the suckers of however we feel, or else ever ready to explore the odd implications of reality. So could it be that our desire to rise against gravity is a bit of customary simian foolishness? Could it be that thousands of years of cultural pageantry, propaganda, and oppression have given us a deranged instinct about the need to get up, go up, and climb? How many kings on their balconies and queen pharaohs looking down from the solar tips of the pyramids do we need to see before our jealousy starts longing for those heights? How many raiders on horseback need to inflict needless cruelty upon us until we start feeling we also want to be up there with the winners? How many times must we be told to get up, stand up, avoid the icky, yucky things down there in the muck of humanity, the muck of the world, the muck of the organism, before we yearn and dream to escape into victory, into honor, into immunity, into godhood? How many moms must tell us to stand up straight and get out of that mucky puddle before we start assuming that down there is bad and we need to go up there, up through the atmosphere, up, I say, where the air is clear?
Chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim chiree. A sweep is as lucky can be. Chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim chiroo. Good luck, we're above when I shake hands with you. Or blow me a kiss, and that's lucky too. Now as the ladder of life has been strung, you might think a sweep's on the bottommost rung. Though I spends me time in the ashes and smoke, in this all wide world there's no happier bloke. Chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim chiree. A sweep is as lucky can be. Chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim chiroo. Good luck, we're above when I shake hands with you. Chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim chiree. A sweep is as lucky can be. Chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim chiroo. Good luck, we're above when I shake hands with you. I choose me bristles with pride, yes I do. A broom for the shaft and a brush for the flue. Up where the smoke is all billowed and curled, between pavement and stars is the chimney sweep world. When there's hardly no day, nor hardly no night, there's things off in shadow and off way in light. On the rooftops of London, what a sight.
Chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim chiree. When you're with a sweep, you're in glad company.
Nowhere is there a more happier crew than them what sings chim chim chiree, chim chiroo. Chim chimney, chim chim chiree, chim chiroo.
and just die.
Welcome back to the Cinematic Asylum on ULICILU CCLU UILCILU 102.7 FM, where we're sinking down and climbing back up from the depths of despair. You just heard Dick Van Dyke from Mary Poppins, and then Hank and Lily's Don't Be Afraid. Chim Chimney. But despite Dick Van Dyke's insistence about getting up there, up where the air is clear, maybe it's not so natural to want to go upwards. Maybe aspirations and ascension are not idealistic, but are actually signs of a peculiar disease that has afflicted the human animal for the past few 100,000 years. From the totem poles to the magic mountains to the palaces and the skyscrapers, maybe straining upward itself is a bit of patriarchal nonsense, although I'm sure the women were also involved. Could these be symptoms of illness? Is the yearning upward a symptom of the pathological rejection of the life-giving power of the muck what birthed us? Maybe organisms grow upward because they hate themselves. Wouldn't that be strange? There may at least be forms, not all, but some forms of upward desire that are misguided, superficial, reactionary. Let us speak of something like false ascending that leaves open the possibility of true ascending somewhere down the line. Let us speak perhaps of premature ascending. You know, in the Far East, when that word still meant something, there were many schools of esoteric anatomy which taught about an energetic loop in the body. An energy that enters at the crown of the head and descends to the base of the spine and circles back upward again. A circuit moving from light down to life and back up to light again. What happens if we break that circuit in order to escape our despair, in order to avoid going all the way down? What if the descending energy only gets as far as your head or your heart or your solar plexus before it jerks like an injured dog and starts frantically trying to run back uphill? How many of our priests and poets and philosophers, saints have had this problem? How many of them advised us to turn our backs on mortality, body, earth, sexuality, food, sleep, everything going on down there, and start hurrying back up the slippery hill to the pure, glowing, immaculate place of abstract, impersonal, luminous existence? And how many of them became sick or even failed to accomplish organic ascending that is possible for a person simply because they refused to first go all the way down before going up? You gotta get down to get up. How many people get sick because they will not take a nap? How many of us cannot sit still lying down for a massage? How many of us cannot put down our thoughts and therefore never rise naturally up in our own minds? Unless we accept going down all the way, we can hardly expect to go up very easily or naturally. Instead, we try to force our way upward in order to avoid the horror of despair and disgust and desperation and depression and devaluation that lies down there, down in the depths, down in the hell of the world, in the depths of despair. Insert unexpected noise. And once we have started to work on ourselves, to accept whatever is down, rather than merely struggling disastrously to go immediately upwards, then maybe we can rise more gracefully. Maybe we start thinking about our growth differently. Maybe instead of trying to go up toward a bodiless and formless God, we start thinking about growing down towards something divine. We used to think God was up there, up above the treetops, but perhaps that apparently obvious sentiment hid a darkly negative opinion about tree roots and dirt. When we feel better about roots in the dirt, maybe we start thinking God is down there somewhere. Maybe we stop thinking of evolution as spiritual ascension and start considering the possibility of evolving into the spiritual depths. Where we used to imagine we were going to fly above our negative thoughts by focusing on goodness, now we think it might be time to get underneath our thoughts, to see where they come from, to undermine their prejudicial structures and sink into our own living roots down into the fertile soil from which all strength ultimately emerges. That's deep, man. It's got legs. It's grounded. It digs down to the heart of things. It gets underneath our defenses. It sinks into the center of our being, down into the depths of potential despair, and then even a little deeper than that. Depth, of course, is an elusive concept to define. When we say that this writer has more depth than that writer, this artist, that yoga teacher has more depth than that one, what do we mean? We mean they may have had more experience, but not just more experiences. They somehow had more of the basic experiences, the deeply human experiences, the real underneath experiences. A subgenius, they say, is a genius at the sub-things. And these folks experience those experiences, these deep folks, they experience their experiences better somehow, more deeply. They assimilated them more completely. They chewed them up better and digested them with greater efficiency. They accepted the down there parts of experience and took it more deeply into themselves rather than letting it just bounce off their emotional armor and start trying to climb rapidly back upwards again too soon. Too soon! We also mean, I suppose, that these deeper people are more nuanced. They've found the cracks in the pavement through which the flowers grow. They've dug around the stump and found there's a larger number of roots reaching further and subdividing into more and more subtler tentacles than we initially thought. We have a deeper appreciation of nature when we can examine it downward through the microscope. Our vision and our feeling passes down through the openings in a material that were formerly treated as though they were one solid block. Our mind encounters a word, a concept that once seemed like an obvious solid block, and now we find within it openings, thresholds, crevices, nuances. We go down into these between areas to see what lies there within and beneath the concept. Here one may discover an idea that has no support, or another idea that has very fertile or secure soil beneath it. We may find two ideas that seemed initially opposite, and now in the depths, they're actually one stronger but singular structure down here. Racists, for example, are usually superficial. Their vision is only skin deep. But when we treat people as being filled with functional organs, as if they were bodies, or filled deeply with the roots of the self-aware nervous system, as if they were humans in general, then we find that they are all beings with a luminous capacity for intelligence that can keep growing and digging and getting deeper and deeper underneath everything. Now, of course, you've probably noticed these kinds of obvious oppositions between heights and depths are themselves not very deep. A fairly superficial contrast at best, as I'm sure you will agree. A tree only grows as high as the roots go deep. These things increase together like dinners and dirty dishes. In fact, the ancient Romans had only one word that meant both height and depth: altus. It exists today in the English word altitude. In fact, it is the same distance down as up. The longer you make a pole, the further it is from the bottom and the further it is from the top in exactly the same gesture. Height and depth are the same damned thing. Even if we wanted to correct some ancestral weirdness about rejecting the depths of despair in favor of premature idealistic ascension toward disembodied glory, we are not therefore spitting on the heights, for heights are nothing but depths. They are both the same thing. Monkeys climb up and down trees, don't they? And just because we love roots doesn't mean we also don't love birds in the sky. We want to be grounded, but we also want to soar high above everything. That's also deep, man. As the old joke goes, why did dinosaurs evolve into birds? Answer: because it's better to fly than rule the world. Here's Jim White with a song of despair.
My girlfriend blows a boozy goodbye kiss. I see flying squirrels and nightmares of stigmata. Then awakening to find my Trans Am gone. Still I'm feeling pretty good about the future. Yeah, everything is peaches but the cream. I'm handcuffed to a fence in Mississippi, where things is always better than they seem. Things is always better than they seem. Things is always better than they seem. I see the guitar that my cousin played in prison is floating with the TV in the swimming pool. I'm calling for the owner of the motel, then noticing the blood stain on the door. I'm reaching for the shoes under the bushes, just in time to hear the siren sing. I'm handcuffed to a fence in Mississippi, where things is always better than they seem. Things is always better than they seem. Things is always better than they seem. My Trans Am is missing. My Trans Am is missing. I guess no more kissing. The girl who loved my car. My Trans Am is missing. My Trans Am is missing. I guess no more kissing. The girl who loved my car. You know, freedom's just a stupid superstition. 'Cause life's a highway that you travel blind. It's true that having fun's a terminal addiction. And what good is happiness when it's just a state of mind? Fall in the prison of perpetual emotion. We all shackled to the millstone of our dreams. Me, I'm handcuffed to a fence in Mississippi. Well, things is always better than me. Yeah, see. Things is always better than they seem.
CILU is sponsored in part by the students of Lakehead University, our listeners, and our sponsors. At this time, we would like to thank the following sponsors for their continuous support.
The Foundry at 242 Red River Road. Open 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. Monday to Saturday, featuring Folking Mondays, Karaoke Tuesdays, Trivia Wednesdays, Open Stage Thursdays, and live music weekends. Find out more at thefoundrypub.com. The Thunder Bay Symphony Orchestra. Log on to tbso.ca or call 626-TBSO for details on their 2019-2020 season and how to get tickets. The Lakehead University Student Union, promoting action, advocacy, and service by bringing you student centers. Learn more by visiting their office in the tunnels of the Student Center or by logging on to lusu.ca.
Bill Foster is an ordinary man.
Where you going?
Going home.
Not this way or not?
Why not?
Metro rail construction, that's why not.
Living in the everyday world.
I don't suppose you have a couple of bucks you can give me. It would really help me out. If you give me your address, I'll mail it back, honest.
A patient man.
Can I help you?
Yes, I'd like a ham and cheese omelet and with lamb fries.
I'm sorry.
We stopped serving breakfast at 11:30.
Who's running out of patience.
I get some change for the phone.
A peaceful man.
No change. I have to buy something.
Who's about to be pushed.
85 cents. 85 cents.
Doesn't give me enough money for the phone call.
Drink. 85 cents. You pay or go.
A little too far.
I stay.
You mean you stole your baseball bat, but he paid for the soda?
Just standing up for my rights. As a consumer.
Oh, this guy's discriminating.
What kind of vigilante are you? I am just trying to get home to my little girl's birthday.
Give us your briefcase.
And if everybody will stay out of my way. Here, you want a briefcase? Here's my briefcase! Oh, there's the briefcase, huh? Wait a minute, wait! Then nobody will get hurt.
Warner Brothers presents.
Say, would you get off my golf course? I am!
The story of an everyday guy who refused.
Fine! Baby, whoa!
To take it one more day.
Sir, we got a nutcase with a bag full of guns. He's in Hollywood right now, and he's heading west.
I don't know if you've noticed or not, but there's other people waiting to use the phone here.
Now, if you go up against this guy, be careful.
I think it's out of order.
Somebody in a white shirt and tie gunned down a phone booth 3 blocks from the Whammy Burger.
Michael Douglas.
In America, we have the freedom of speech. Come on, if I want to be in a parking lot, I'll buy a ticket. The right to disagree.
Robert Duvall.
I know who this guy is.
In a Joel Schumacher film.
What are you doing to the street?
We're fixing it. What the hell does it look like?
See, I don't think anything's wrong with the street. I think you're just trying to justify your inflated budgets.
Well, I guess so.
I'll give you something to fix.
What are you... Hey, Charlie!
Falling down.
Let's call it a day.
Come on. I'm the bad guy?
A tale of urban reality.
That was the trailer from the 1993 Michael Douglas film Falling Down. Tale of a man whose generalized frustration with the organization of modern society becomes despair, which expresses itself as aggression. The classic American movie, an ordinary man going rogue, taking the law into his own hands and trying to renormalize himself with aggressive, transgressive behavior. The great philosopher of aggression, of course, at least before Fritz Perls came onto the scene, was Friedrich Nietzsche. That diabolically clever philologist, philosopher, and proto-psychoanalyst who complained about short-sighted Darwinists and Schopenhauerists, those fools, he said, who thought the basic drive was the will to live, the urge to survive, the intention to persist and replicate. He found this preposterous. Yes, the examples we have today are examples of that which happened to have survived, meaning that existing forms will be statistically much more likely to exhibit pro-survival tendencies. But nonetheless, the more basic and original drive, he said, was what he called the will to empowerment, the will to get better, stronger, feel your own existence more intensely than you currently do, the will to overcome things, particularly the will to overcome yourselves. You are an example of the universe's general desire to overcome itself, to achieve more power, to be deeper, to reach out for what it needs, past its own borders. And for that, you have to have something to overcome. So we, being organisms, reach out for adversaries, obstacles, problems. We're always looking for them. Essentially, you reach out for a flow state in which there is a match between your capacities and your problems. Too much problem or not enough problem is a real problem, as I'm sure you will agree. You want to juggle or dance or shoot space invaders in the video game of life, you need a constant influx of the right kind of difficulties. And this is what we reach out for. This is what a single-celled organism reaches out for. The tendrils of the vines, he said, do not climb the tree because they are trying to protect their life, but rather because they are reaching out for things to argue with, footholds to occupy, bumps to survive, branches to grip, chaoses to pattern, mysteries to interpret. The force of outreach in the service of finding the right obstacles to struggle with is pretty much what we mean by aggression whenever we don't mean that word in its narrowest possible and meanest sense. And I mention this in connection with the film Falling Down because Falling Down plays a fascinating role in Nietzschean thought. Particularly in his messianic prose poem, Thus Spake Zarathustra, Nietzsche's struggle to overcome his own despair led to an amazing depth of thought and an amazing clarity also about the dangers and the necessities of falling down. Nietzsche wanted to honor that which surrenders and falls and destroys itself as part of the wondrous increase of overall anti-fragility in natural systems, but he also wanted to urge us upward toward levity, flight, peak experiences, and away from what he called the great devil, the spirit of gravity, the heaviness of depression and clumsiness, the dullness of mind, and the weariness of the heart. Listen to these passages from Thus Spake Zarathustra. What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not a goal. What can be loved in man is that he is an overgoing and a downgoing. I love those who know not how to live except as downgoers, for they are the overgoers. I love the great despisers, because they are the great reverers, and arrows of longing for another shore. I love those who do not first seek a reason beyond the stars for going down and being sacrifices, but who sacrifice themselves directly to the earth, so that the earth of the ultra-human may someday arrive. I love him who lives in order to know and seeks to know in order that the ultra-human may someday live in expense of himself. Thus he seeks his own downgoing. I love him who works hard and invents a future that he or she may build a house for the ultra-human and prepare for that one the earth, the animals, the plants, for in that act they seek their own downgoing and become fertilizer. I love him who loves his virtue, for virtue is the will to self-destruction and a downgoing and an arrow of longing. I love him who reserves no drop of spirit for himself, but wants to be entirely the spirit of his virtues, for thus he walks as a spirit over the strange bridge. I love him who makes his virtue into an addiction and a destiny. Thus, for the sake of virtue, he is willing to live on or to live no more. I love him whose soul squanders itself, who wants no thanks and gives none back, for he always gives and desires not to preserve himself. I love she who is ashamed when the dice fall in her favor, and who asks, Am I then a dishonest player? For she is willing to perish. I love him who scatters golden words in front of his deeds, and always does more than he promises, for he exhausts himself and seeks his own downgoing. I love him whose soul is deep even in wounds and despair, and who may perish even from a small experience, and thus he goes gladly over the strange bridge. I love him whose soul is so overfull that he forgets himself and includes himself then in all things and all things in himself, for thus all things become his downgoing. I love a free spirit and a free heart. I love all who are like heavy drops falling one by one out of the dark cloud that hangs over humanity. They herald the coming of the lightning, and they perish as prophets. Behold, I too am a herald of the lightning and a heavy drop out of the cloud. Wow! And how about this nonsense? Those who appreciate life, the butterflies and soap bubbles and whatever is like them among us, seem most to enjoy happiness. To see these light, foolish, petty, lively little sprites flit about, that moves Zarathustra to tears and songs. I should only believe in a god that knew how to dance, and when I saw my devil I found him serious, thorough, profound, solemn. He was the spirit of gravity. Through him all things fall. Not by wrath, but by laughter do we slay. So come then, let us slay the spirit of gravity with laughter. I learned to walk, since then I have let myself run. I learned to fly, since then I do not need pushing in order to move. Now I am light, and now do I fly, and I see myself beneath myself, and a god dances in me. But there also I found again my old devil and arch enemy, the spirit of gravity. And all that it created, constraint, law, necessity, and consequence, and purpose, and will, and good, and evil, of course these things, for must there not be that which is danced over and danced beyond? Well, Herr Mr. Nietzsche once jokingly wrote in his notebooks that neurologically unfit human beings should not be allowed to breed. They should be made celibate to improve the breeding stock of the species, and he said this might be achievable simply by making them listen to the degenerative anti-life music of his friend Richard Wagner, whose later operatic heroes and heroines like Parsifal struck Nietzsche as anti-pagan eunuchs and depressives, people unable to avoid the depths of despair, or perhaps the shallows of despair. Although today we'd probably say the choice about who remains celibate or not might be more intentionally left to the evolutionary instincts of women, nonetheless, in order to sabotage the very core of your own vitality, here's Wagner's Tristan und Isolde from the opening to Lars Trier's depression-themed classic, the film Melancholia.
I see my redhead, mess bed, tear shed, cream beam and squeeze. The stage smells, tells, hells, bells, misspells, knocks me on my knees. It didn't hurt, flirt, blood, squirt, stuff, shirt like me on a tree. After I count down 3 rounds in hell, I'll be in good company.
One of those layman Pascals, and you're listening to The Depths of Despair on the Cinematic Asylum on CILU 102.7 of the FM dial, and that was Wagner's Tristan und Isolde from the Lars von Trier film Melancholia, followed by a titch of the Dead South. Melancholy, of course, a synonym for gloom, sadness, despondency, sullenness, but it literally meant black bile, the semi-mythological medical diagnosis of ancient Greek doctors who attributed despondency and despair to an excess of black bile among the so-called humors. And before we dismiss them as primitive pre-scientific quacks, consider the possibility that some of them had a deep and profound intuitive understanding of the balances needed for human thriving, and that the humors are not necessarily a childish proto-version of contemporary neuroanatomy any more than the 4 elements are just a failed prototype of the current periodic table. Those old schemes may in fact have been trying to do something different or something more than maybe even more comprehensible and maybe even more humanly comprehensive. I don't know. Maybe they were just quacks. Who knows when it comes to ducks? Ducks, I think, prone to despair. Almost every duck, from Donald to Daffy to Duckman, seems to be flustered, irritable, and prone to explosions of pointless rage that probably have their source in a profound disquiet of the feelings. Anger often tries desperately to stave off depression in the face of stimuli that appear to provoke our despair. But ducks quickly calm back down again, leading our medical authorities to diagnose all ducks as manic depressives. Manic depression, of course, what we now call bipolar disorder, a terrible affliction, although it sometimes seems like we could all complain that sometimes we feel really good and other times not so good. The bipolar character, like most folk with so-called mental disorders, presents an exaggerated version of the suffering and nonsense that all the rest of us are also going through in a slightly easier fashion. I've always speculated that mental order is a good working balance or symphony of mental disorders. Disorders working as a team, say, but then again, I've come to feel a bit suspicious about our contemporary reliance on neuropsychiatric thought patterns. Sure, they have an important role to play, especially in looking at things like despair, but can we really dismiss so hastily and blithely the old pre-psychoanalytic, pre-neuropsychological, theological concepts? Do sin, guilt, evil, and goodness have a role to play in understanding despair? Certainly, religion has simultaneously combated and caused a lot of despair on the planet, although it depends on how we define the word religion. I recently watched the 4-part Netflix documentary about the Ted Bundy tapes. Infamous 1970s serial killer Ted Bundy seems to speak in different voices, discuss an entity that takes hold of him, acts sanely sometimes and compulsively self-destructive and evil at other times, has trouble remembering those times and describes them as a blank. Isn't it a bit surprising that alongside speculations about Ted's possible manic-depressive sociopathy, that no one in a 4-hour documentary even mentions the possibility of a demon? Why is it that analytic terminology now puts that off the table? Why are we gung-ho on conditions but just say no to entities? Do we think the deep utility of ancient metaphysical concepts just vanished when Freud came onto the scene? If you don't mind me calling you Shirley, then surely we must be cautious about abandoning our old cosmologies whose full range of uses and effects we cannot be certain about. You should be cautiously if you just start You should be cautious, I say, if you just start pulling bricks out of a building. You don't know which one is the most supportive in the structure. Speaking of demons and black magic, the great infamous early 20th century occultist Aleister Crowley once composed a parable about what he called the 3 schools of magic. He used the analogy of a dirty glass of water. The black school simply smashes the glass and gets rid of the problem. The yellow school waits for the sediment to sink down to the bottom and then has clear, still water above it. And the white school flushes it with new water, which initially makes it a lot messier, but soon you have a clear glass of good water. 3 different metaphorical solutions to the problem of existence. Intriguing, but today we're thinking about the secret despair and negative judgment of reality that comes along with what Crowley called the black school. The desire to get ahead and redeem the world by smashing it or devaluing it or not caring about it, to get free of the tangle of dissatisfaction that is tempting you and probably hides a great sense of despair. That was a few seconds of Leonard Cohen from the opening to the intriguing but cold and ill-packaged second season of HBO's True Detective. It stood in contrast to the amazing first season, which people at the time argued was the greatest thing on TV, giving Breaking Bad and The Wire a run for their money. That first season was often described as nihilistic and pessimistic by people who don't think deeply about those topics. The superficial thinker considers things in terms of what topics are being overtly discussed on the surface. The deep thinker considers the implications of how those topics are discussed. It's tricky. Should a book of jokes about the Civil War be put in the history and warfare section of the bookstore or in the humor section? If a person who thinks they need to enforce the law of good, someone who trusts in the law of God, and perhaps the exact opposite, and if a character like Matthew McConaughey's Rust Cole on Season 1 of True Detective speaks about pessimism and the world not having a meaning, then is it a show about pessimism and the world not having meaning? Or is the fact that he says it in a fun, intriguing, artistic way actually a high value upon fun, intrigue, and artistry, which in turn confer a very high value to life and meaning and the world? One of the giveaways, of course, is that True Detective is trans-nihilistic instead of nihilistic in the ending, in which our hero, facing a near-death experience, goes down into a depressing darkness of nothing, which surprisingly goes then even further into a darkness below the first darkness, in which the spirit of all his loved ones is there reaching out for him in total consolation. This movie, of course, is an archetype of the blues, the extremely uplifting and beautiful music about misery and being downtrodden and despairing, slavery converted into triumph, misery converted into beauty, a way of accessing the truly liberating feeling that there is an unutterable victory underneath, in the depths below even the worst things, victory not the opposite of failure, but something deeper than failure. I'm Layman Pascal, and you've been listening to some poor fool disputing the depths of despair on the Cinematic Asylum, as I'm sure you will agree, on CILU 102.7 FM.
Where am I?
The pit of despair. Don't even think.
Don't even think about trying to escape.
The pit of despair.
And Shirley, I've heard all about it. Now you open your door at once.
Go away, Marilla. I'm in the depths of despair.
Oh, fiddlesticks. Now you open this door at once.
Please go away, Marilla. I'm in the depths of despair. I'm in the depths of despair. I'm in the depths of despair.
Oh, fiddlesticks.
I'm in the depths of despair. I'm in the depths of despair.
Oh, fiddlesticks. Are you sick?
Go away. Don't look at me.
Oh, don't play innocent with me. So ashamed I don't know where to begin.
I'm in the depths of
What do you mean by breaking your slate over some boy's head?
Call me Carrot.
I don't care what he called you. You have no reason to lose your temper.
I'm in
Shirley.
the depths of despair.
Oh, what have you done to your hair?
I'm in the depths of despair. Bad as red hair. Green is 10 times worse. I don't know how utterly wretched I am.
I don't know how you got into this fix, but I demand that you tell me.
I dyed it. I'm in the depths of despair.
For mercy's sake, child.
But he positively assured me it turned my hair a beautiful raven black.
Who did? Who are you talking about?
The peddler we met on the road today. I'm in the depths of
Absolutely
despair.
forbid you to. What's the use? Well, I hope that this has opened your eyes to see where your vanity has taken you.
What shall I do? I'll never be able to live this down. I can't face him again. Gilbert Blythe had no right to call me Carrots.
You really smashed your slate over that boy's head?
Yes,
Hard?
very hard, I'm afraid.
The pit of despair.
I know I should be angry. I should be furious. What a way to behave your first day at school. But if you promise me that nothing of this sort will happen again, I won't say another word about it.
Send me back?
I've come to a decision. The trial is over. You will stay at Green Gables.
Marilla.
I think you may be a kindred spirit after all.
The pit of despair.
Oh, fiddlesticks.
Thinking of purchasing your first home or investment property? Or maybe you've outgrown your home or need to downsize? With Sarah Curtin and Chris Houle, you will gain two allies who have your best interests at heart through every step of the process. When you're ready to make a move, contact your neighborhood realtors Sarah Curtin Broker and Chris Houle, Sales Representative at Apex Realty. Call or text Sarah Curtin at 632-3635 or Chris Houle at 620-9057. Find them online at sarahcurtin.com.
CILU is sponsored in part by the students of Lakehead University, our listeners, and our sponsors. At this time, we would like to thank the following sponsors for their continuous support.
Signal Resources Limited, Thunder Bay's locally owned and operated audiovisual professionals. Contact them about your next multimedia event or installation at 475-9341 or online at signalresources.com. The Thunder Bay Community Auditorium. Find them at tbca.com to purchase tickets and find out all of the details on their upcoming events. Vox Popular Media Arts Festival, located inside Trinity Hall at 310 Park Avenue. Join the fun every September for their annual Media Arts Fest, entering its 15th year in 2019. For tickets, call 346-0066 or visit their website at voxpopular.ca.